Hello everybody and welcome to another of our whiskey comparison videos. I am Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore, and today I'm going to be tasting two Highland Single Malt whiskeys. You may have heard of these, they may be brand new to you. One of them is Deanston, which comes from the town of Doune. Now, if you've ever seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, then you've seen the castle, which is called Doune Castle, which is right down the river from here. In fact, you can walk to it. I walked to it. I got my shoes pretty muddy, but you're able to actually walk down in between there. There's a little trail, and that's where they filmed the scene of the French knights throwing the cow and run away, all that. So if you ever get to Doune, you definitely need to go to Doune Castle, but the other place that you need to go is to the Deanston Distillery. Deanston is unique in that it's not built in a distillery, but it is built in a cotton mill. So Deanston had a cotton mill for a long time, and then in the 1960s, things got really bad in the textile industry, and the cotton mill shut down. Well, I was thinking about doing a episode based around the fact that a whiskey distillery moved into this cotton mill and maybe it saved the town. But when you consider that the cotton mill probably employed 200 to 300 people and the distillery was like 20 to 30 people, didn't really save the town. And as I found out while I was on the tour, they actually shut down Deanston Distillery in 1974 because of the whiskey depression that was going on at that time, and it didn't reopen until 1997. So there was a long period where there were barrels in the warehouse that were just aging with no real plan for what could happen to those barrels, and so it stayed mothballed for quite a long time. But it's back. And it's a cool distillery if you get a chance to visit it because, as I say, it's built in a cotton mill, and they are the only distillery that I know of in Scotland that runs 100% off of water power. In fact, they sell 85% of the power that they generate back to the grid. So they are self-sustaining in that way. You've heard me, if you've listened to any of read my book or listened to any of my podcasts, talk about the idea of taking draff or the slop that's left over, all the old spent grain, and how all the distilleries talk about giving it to farmers and feeding it to cattle. They do that as well, but they also use it for biofuel. So it's cool to see how they're creating a sustainable setup there at Deanston. And of course, they make whiskey, and they make quite a few different types of whiskey. And while I was there, I got to try one that was a 23-year-old Oloroso sherry cask, which had these chocolate flavors and stuff in them. Really good. This is the 12-year, and you can get this anywhere in the U.S. You can get this around the world. This is their flagship. And I find it cool. On the bottle, they actually not only tell who the master distiller is, but they give the stillman and some other positions. They all got a chance to sign that bottle, so that's cool. The whiskey itself is very interesting in that they have the longest fermentation time when it's sitting in that mash, or when it goes from the mash tun into the fermenters. Normally distilleries will tell you maybe 3 days that they'll let it sit in there. They go from 80 to 100 hours, and the reason that they say they stretch the fermentation is to get more of the fruity characteristics out of the whiskey. So that's what we're going to be looking for when we go into this whiskey today, to taste it and see where it goes. You'll notice I have a little capper there. And the reason I have that is because this one, the nose isn't as strong as some other whiskeys. And so sometimes it's hard to find those scents. And so I've capped it so that all of those vapors kind of working their way up there, and they're waiting to get out, and then when I uncap it, we'll get a chance to get a good nose on that whiskey. And I was going to say, little tip, if you want to do the same thing, but you don't have this fancy piece of glassware, take your little canister. Many scotches come in these little canisters, and you can have your own branded cap, and you can do it that way. How about that? I hope Glengarry doesn't mind that I am capping it right now with a Deanston cap, but that's the idea. Let's talk a little bit about Glengarry too before we get into doing the tasting. Glengarry is a distillery that I wish I had had a chance to go see. It's a very small distillery. You'll see by the spelling there that it may confuse you as to how I got Glengarry out of that, but Glengarry, I think, more gear instead of gare. This is I don't know how they got the name that way, but they did. But that's how you pronounce it. This is a distillery that is, I've read it's the most easternmost in Scotland. I don't know, there's some below Edinburgh. I don't know if they go further east or not, but if you're up in Speyside, you got to drive ways over to get to first Glendronach, and then as you're heading to Aberdeen, you will get to Glengarry. So I didn't get a chance to go last time. It's a small distillery. To kind of give you an idea how small it is, Glengarry is 1 million liter capacity per year. 1 million liters of whiskey produced a year. Deanston is 3 million. And then we could talk about somebody like Glenfiddich is going to be up around 12 million. You're going to be up around 16 million for Macallan now that they've increased the size of their distillery. So this is a smaller distillery. It's one of the oldest in Scotland. 1797 is the date that they give for that, when they became legal. And so there's a history behind it as well. And so that all kind of makes it interesting for us to take a trip to Scotland and go check the place out and see what it's about. The reason you can get it in the United States is because it's made by or owned by Beam Suntory, and they seem to be doing a nice job of letting these guys stay at more of like a craft level rather than a big major distillery. So we're going to taste that here in a moment and see what the differences are between the two. Let's start with the Deanston here. By the way, if you walk in their warehouse, they had a couple movies filmed there. One was the Angel Share movie, which I haven't seen yet. I'm going to watch it tonight because so many people have told me to watch it. It's on Amazon apparently, so I'm going to give that a shot. And I'll report back. Oh, that has a really nice sweet smell to it. When you go to the distillery, you'll smell a lot of green apple when you're walking around. And they have a open top mash tun, which is not something that, I think there's only 3 distilleries that have open top mash tuns, and they are one of them. Glenturret is another, and I would say Boonhaven, I think, is the other. There's baking spice in this on the nose to go along with the fruit. I would say a cinnamon. You get the oats. What it reminds me of is having your oatmeal in the morning. If you have apple cinnamon oatmeal, that's what it reminds me of. There's a little pear in there also to me. Now they use bourbon casks for this, 100% ex-bourbon. And so when you're on the tour, they'll tell you, look for all of the regular bourbon characteristics like caramel, vanilla, oak. I get the oak. The caramel, not so much on the nose, and vanilla, but vanilla is always a tough one for me to pull out. Very pleasant in the mouth. It is not a heavy mouthfeel though. I'm a medium. It's not watery. So it's right in the middle. You get the apples. You get a little yeastiness in there towards the end. There's a little alcohol bite that comes in. It's 46.3% ABV. the fruitiness stays there, and you continue to kind of get that little bit of apple. That green apple's always there. A little bit of alcohol in there on top of it, but it's not annoying. But it's a very fruity whiskey. It is definitely a fruity whiskey, and I don't get the vanilla and the caramel. Yeah, specifically looking for it, but I get like almost red apple peel in there. Interesting. So yeah, it's a very fruity whiskey. It's a little light on the nose, so I kind of the capper helps make a difference in that one. Then we come over to the Glengarry, and this is in bourbon and sherry, but it's different than most. What they do is they marry together a cask that has a single malt that has been aging in a bourbon and a single malt that's been aging in a sherry. It's not a finishing project. It's sort of like a blending project, but they call it marrying because you're not, it's still a single malt. It's still considered a single malt. So this one gets a little bit more, it's the reason I put these together is because they both give me that green apple, but Glengarry is a lot drier. The smells are there, but it's a bit more complex. And so I find this is a whiskey I just have to sit with. Because there's spices in there, but it's hard for me to pull out exactly what those spices are. Much more of a rich mouthfeel on that one. What I love about this whiskey is that it has a long finish, and what you get on the palate rides all the way out, and you can sit there and 2 minutes later it's like, wow, it's very balanced all the way through, and it doesn't fade out on you. It gives you a nice, comfortable, long finish, whereas the Deanston is there and gone. It's kind of like, yeah, you got it, enjoy it, but it's going to be out of there. This one, again, lingers a bit longer. There is fruit definitely on this, and it's more orchard fruits than it is dark fruits to me. But there's other stuff going on here. I smell ginger in there, actually. It's one of the first whiskeys I've smelled ginger on. Really nice mouthfeel on that. Both of these are unchill filtered, which is great. I don't know. I think the complexity is probably coming in a bit from the sherry casks and the way that they blend them together. It's like I get a hint of what I would expect out of a sherried whiskey in this. But the thing with whiskeys that are complex for me is that every time I drink it, I'll pick something else out. And there's so many flavors going on at the same time that it makes it really hard for me to do this kind of a presentation and just say, yep, tastes like this. Yep, tastes like that. Because there's a lot of other stuff in there. Everything is subtle. So you guys said that this was the winner, 58% to 42%. I'm guessing a lot of you probably haven't tried this whiskey, and so if you get a chance to, I would highly suggest it. Which one would I keep in my cabinet between the two? I'm going with the Glengarry, and I'm going with the Glengarry by a hair, and only because I love the middle and the finish, really nice, and it's complex. It's something I can investigate and have a conversation about when I'm tasting with other people. Let me know in the notes what you guys think about it as well, and look forward to another video coming up soon.